everybody, and welcome back to yet another very exciting episode of the Friends Talking Fantasy Podcast. My name is Charles, and with me today, as always, is my lifelong friend and co-host, Dylan.
I'm ready to talk some fantasy with my friend, Charles.
I am ready to talk some fantasy with my friend as well, Dylan, but not just any fantasy today, because today we are doing a check-in on a reading project that has been going on for almost a year now. Isn't that right, Dylan?
That's exactly what we're here to do. So many of you may be familiar with the R Fantasy subreddit. It's got over a million, now over 3.6 million members.
You're only off by about 2.6 million.
I feel like the last time we recorded this, I was like, it's over a million, and now it's over 3. So it is well over 3 million, Charles, and
yep.
It does this interesting yearly event, which is the R Fantasy bingo board. And essentially, you got a bingo board with a bunch of categories on there, examples of categories that we'll be getting into today. It'll be something like a book with a druid in it. It'll be something like queer norm setting. I mean, a bunch of these categories, and it's designed to create these like more broad reading habits among the people who are going about reading all this. So we've got 25 spaces. Ideally, you want to finish all of the spaces, not just create a bingo.
Right.
So, of course, whatever your goals are, it's up to you.
It's a loose interpretation of the bingo game, I will say that. Yes. The only relationship is that it's a bunch of categories on a grid and you're trying to fill them. But yeah, it's not the same amount as a bingo square. The goal is to fill the whole thing. So that's something to keep in mind. And so what we're doing today, the 2023 bingo period goes from April 1st, 2023 to March 31st of 2024. So we are, maybe 5 weeks away at the time of this recording from the end of the time period for the book bingo challenge. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down all the categories today. We're going to talk about all the books that we've read, maybe drop some recommendations as well. And that's the thing. This is going to be spoiler-free. There's going to be lots of book recommendations in here. We have done, at the beginning of this contest, a whole recommendation series by category, so definitely check that out if you're looking to broaden your horizons. You're a little late in the game to kind of start now, but who knows? Maybe if you're an avid reader, you've already met a lot of these rules. So we're going to be playing on one board between Dylan and I, just what we've discussed on the show, pretty much. Maybe if we've done some independent reading, we'll throw it in here if we need to.
Throw those in, Charles.
Throw those in.
We need everything we can get. Because we've read way more than 25 books, but we were in no way making an effort to address these categories during the year, so it's kind of a fun exercise for us to see, okay, if we filled one out for the boys of FTF, then how many did we just, by nature of reading whatever we wanted to, how many did we fill over here, and then how many are left, and is there a chance for us to finish this up before the end of not the year, but the end of the cycle when it comes to these bingo boards, which is the last day of March. So I am interested to see how this all works out for us. It is, and then there's an opportunity for you all to come in and give us recommendations for any of the remaining categories.
I mean, depending on how many categories are left, we should try and finish it. We'll see. I'm assuming we're going to be close, but like you said, Dylan, there's a couple rules here that we got to keep in mind. You can't use the same book more than once. You can't repeat an author more than once, except for the short story square. And then in that case, it can't be the same book. And then only one square can be a book that you've reread, which we may bend that rule a little bit depending on how desperate we are. But those are some of the rules.
Yeah, my idea is if it's a new read for at least one of us, then we're going to count that as not a reread. It is, I think, pretty fair if we're doing a combined bingo card for the two of us. Then, yeah, it's not. We do a lot of these, right? Where I've read a book or you've read a book, and the person who's read it brings it to friends pitching fantasy and tries to convince the other person like it's time to finally read this book for you.
Right.
So I don't know. It kind of goes against the FTF. One of our staples of what we do on here is read a book that one of us has already read and the other has not. So, Charles, without further ado, shall we get into the bingo board?
Let's get past the adieus already, and let's go right into the first. We'll just go from the first top left corner and left to right, top to bottom. Let's just go down these categories here. So the first row, first square, is title with a title. Read a book in which the novel title contains a job title, military title, or title of nobility, such as locksmith, lieutenant, or lord. Hard mode is, and that again, each category has hard mode, which we're going to try and also fulfill, but no guarantees. And hard mode is not a title of royalty. So I think we got to just be looking back at our library of episodes. I think that's where we got to start first. I mean, the first one that comes to mind, obviously, is Assassin's Apprentice. You know, an apprentice being the title, or assassin. I mean, they're both titles by Robin Hobb. That is a hard mode.
It should be two titles.
Yeah, exactly. The book needs to be 100% titles in the title, every word. So in that case, we're starting off pretty strong.
Charles,
do we need to put in a couple more just in case?
Here. Can we can we mix this one up a little bit to not use our reread spot? Because remember, I had read Assassin's Apprentice before. Right. So can we use Assassin's Quest, the final book in the trilogy, which I had not read before?
Yes, we can do that for sure. I'm totally down. I'm going to pull up our website, theftfpodcast.com. Highly recommend checking that out, which has conveniently every episode that we've ever done on it. And so I'm just going back here to see what other potential books we could put in here. It's always good to have options in case we need to move people around, you know. So we just want to make sure that we considered everything.
I also have this account on this little known site called Goodreads, which if you were on, you would have every single book you've read this year documented easily. But sure, episode catalog as well.
Either way, you know, another great place is Spotify. On our show on Spotify, you could just go through all the titles there, and while you're at it, you could rate 5 stars and all those beautiful things.
But Charles, here's the problem with that is
I'm listening.
There's so much other incredible content on our podcast feed, like recommendations episodes, for example, where I don't know, you don't want all that amazing content getting in the way of seeing all the titles. But
that's true. That is true. So definitely worth considering there. I don't know, man. I think that may be the book. I'm looking at a bunch of these other ones. I'm not seeing too many titles here. We did read Prince of Thorns, but when did we air that episode? And that was royalty as well.
So all these would have to be from April 1st till now. So April 1st of last year. But I think we read, and that's a reread for both of us. So,
and it's got a royalty title in there. So I think we can just go ahead and move on, and we'll leave Assassin's Quest in there, or Royal Assassin, or take your pick in there. So the next category that we have, this one might be a little trickier, Dylan, is superheroes. Story focuses on superpowered individuals. And then the hard mode is not related to DC or Marvel. So
Charles, would you consider the city we became to be superheroes?
It's a stretch. It's a stretch.
Okay.
But if we have nothing better, they don't like wear capes and stuff. But there are heroes and villains, and they do have superpowers, and it is action packed, and it's in New York City. So I'm willing to put that there as a placeholder, but I'm wondering if there's anything else we've read. Because you read Steelheart, but that was before this reading period, so it doesn't count.
Charles,
and that would
the criteria just says story focuses on superpowered individuals. Would you say that the city we became fits into that criteria?
Yes.
Okay.
100 times yes. So I would definitely say that is the case, and maybe we'll just leave it there for now. So we'll move on. Bottom of the TBR. Read one of the books that's been on your TBR pile that's to be read the longest. If you do not keep a TBR, read one of the books that you have been meaning to read for the longest time but haven't. So there's no hard mode on this one.
For you.
For me?
Promise of Blood. Hasn't that been by Brian
McClellan? Oh, dude, yeah. Promise of Blood. That's a great one. Yeah, that's been on my TBR for forever. And I'm so glad that we read that. You know, it's great military fantasy, really great magic systems. Flintlock. Yes.
Yeah. Brian McClellan, one of the folks taught by Brandon Sanderson himself, and you can see his hard magic systems and the way it's kind of hard magic system fighting against soft magic system with the more elemental mystical powers of the privileged in there. It's a great series overall, so a lot of folks will probably enjoy that. I guess we should probably be giving some semblance of this summary.
Why not? You know, we're here, so we may as well go ahead and shout out some of these books that we've read. And any book that's on here is obviously a recommend and that we really enjoyed. So definitely want to make sure we include those. Now, Dylan, the next category is magical realism or literary fantasy. Read a book that portrays magical or unreal elements in an otherwise realistic or mundane environment. So the hard mode is none of the 30 books in the linked thread, which I'm not going to check out any other linked threads for the sake of this episode. This would also be a spot for the city we became, if you would classify New York City as a otherwise realistic or mundane environment, which I would. But maybe we should extend that. How about tomorrow, and tomorrow? Are we gonna count
There's
that?
No magic in that.
A book that portrays magic. It portrays magic in an unmagic area. You're correct. So that would not count. I'm assuming Yellowface.
Literary fantasy. So
does Yellowface have any magical stuff? It doesn't, right?
What's that? What are you saying?
Yellowface has no magic in it, right?
No, it has no magic in it. Literary fantasy, though, I'm looking through The Mountain and the Sea is kind of literary.
That would be a good
fantasy,
one.
Though it's really more sci-fi. This might be if we want to stretch for sci-fi, Stranger in a Strange Land, which I read, is definitely literary. It's definitely literary. Okay.
Now we could put The House in the Cerulean Sea in here as well. It's got magical creatures and blobby characters and sons of devils and all this other stuff in there, set in a very mundane setting of like a Fire Island kind of place. But I feel like we're going to want to use that for other stuff, but I'll put it in here because it is
mundane jobs. Charles,
yeah, so there's so many that The House in the Cerulean Sea would work for that it's like I'll put it here, but I think we should try and come up with some more. And shout out to The House in the Cerulean Sea for being such a trendy book that could cover so many squares. in a contest designed to broaden reading horizons. So that's a recommend for sure. So we'll put it in there. Do you want to put your sci-fi book in there?
Stranger in a Strange Land.
Yeah.
So okay, Charles.
Yeah.
Another sort of sci-fi, but Dune at this point is essentially literary, I think. Like, it is included.
We're considering literary. I didn't understand that part of this square. Okay.
Charles.
Yeah.
Literary fiction. I mean, what is literary fiction? We're gonna end up being like Googling that, but if it's anything that's in the fiction section rather than the fantasy sci-fi sections, then the Midnight Library, which I just read, would fit into that. Like, that's not being stocked as fantasy.
It's used as a synonym for literature, writing specifically considered to have considerable artistic merit.
Okay, that's...
And it says employed in the genres of science fiction, crime fiction, and romance. See, so I think if any science fiction book was going to be considered a literary classic, it would be Dune. And let's be real, we're not going to be able to put Dune anywhere else in here. So right, we're going to lean on the literary fantasy part of this, and we are going to put Dune. I like that. Let's save House in the Cerulean Sea for something else. Now we're going into category number 5, young adult. Read a book that was written for young adults. Hard Mode is published in the last 5 years. Now, we had a bunch of recommendations for this, but none of them that we read. We said Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, Half a King. Oh, I read Half a King for the first time in December. I read that. Charles, yeah.
That's probably the choice. I also have Defiant, which is the final book of the Skyward series, which came out this year. So if we want to beat Hard Mode...
Let's put it in. We didn't read that much Brandon Sanderson this reading period, so we read like some of the Stormlight Archive, which isn't going to get us too much points on the board. So that may be a place that we can use Sanderson in this young adult.
And but if we'll put have to double Sanderson, if we have to double him, then so be it.
Because we're allowed to double one author, right? Yes. That's part of the rules. Okay, so between those two, I'm feeling good. So highly recommend either of those books, honestly. Like, if you're like me and you're just itching for more Abercrombie, come on.
Skyward series is Sanderson's take on sci-fi. It is still, I would say, kind of more space fantasy-esque than it is hard sci-fi or anything like that. But it's a fun young adult series with a really great one of those protagonists that's really rash and takes everything on, super proactive, and come on, you got space and some magic system stuff going on, and you got
space and magic, baby. Let's go. So highly recommend. Okay, we're down to the second row, and so far we have not missed a square. It's gotten pretty close, a little dicey, but we have not missed anything. So in the second row, we have mundane jobs. So this is the protagonist has a commonplace job that can be found in the real world. We are also excluding soldiers. So hard mode, it does not take place on Earth. Now, this is another area where the House in the Cerulean Sea would work. It takes place on Earth, so that's a little bit of a bummer, but it does work. Let's see, where else are we going to find mundane jobs featured prominently?
I mean, depending on if you consider this mundane, but I think it fits the way the criteria is framed. The Mountain in the Sea by Ray Naylor, which is a story that we covered in a spoiler-free episode. It's about humankind discovering an octopus species that is extremely intelligent, has its own language, its own culture, and they go to inspect it. It also deals with some concepts of AI and stuff like that. the main character is a marine biologist. I mean, I don't think that's mundane in, as jobs in the real world go. But
jobs in a fantasy book go,
yes.
It's mundane to be assigned like a marine biologist, like a legit one.
Yes.
So I agree with you that in the spirit of this tile, in this contest, it should count. Wasn't the guy in Senlin Ascends, wasn't he like a lawyer or something? What was his job?
Oh, he was like the headmaster of a school.
That's way more mundane than a marine biologist.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Yeah,
it depends on the school
totally
and the research, I guess. But no, shout out to all my headmasters out there.
Yeah. Okay. So Senlin Ascends is about a guy who. It's by Josiah Bancroft, and it's about a guy whose wife goes missing in this tower Babel that has almost endless floors. All of the different floors are kind of a world unto themselves, and he is searching for his wife who's gone missing.
Would you consider like Yellowface, like a character being an author, a mundane job?
It's not fantasy, though. I don't think we can count it for any of this.
I keep looking at that, being like, we got to be able to use it, but you're right. Let's go with that. I mean, I don't see anywhere else that I would use it. Okay. We shall continue to move along. So the next read that we have is published in the 2000s. But read a book that was published between 2000 and 2009. Hard mode is it's not in the top 30 of our Fantasy's best of 23 list. So not going to look at what that is. I think we'll be lucky to find a book that we've read from the 2000s in this period. We've read a lot of like pre-2000s and a lot of modern stuff. Let's see. Have we read anything that was published in the 2000s? Oh man, A Dance of Cloaks was published in 2010. So close. So close, by David Dalglish. It has early 2000s energy, but it just being so close to like Mistborn and Prince of Thorns and all those things. But I guess it was just released a little bit later. Just missed the cutoff.
Charles, I'm seeing so many like 2010s.
Yeah, that was so let's see, what else do we have?
This is rough, Charles.
Are we gonna get dinged for this one? Are we gonna need to
one to go out on?
Because we've read. Okay, what about Assassin's Quest? Right, when was that released?
Charles.
Yeah.
I read Choke by Chuck Palahniuk, the author of Fight Club, and it was published in 2002. Woo!
Okay, what's the author's name?
Chuck Palahniuk. He's the author of
How do you spell Palahniuk?
Fight Club.
I'm familiar with Fight Club.
Palahniuk.
Okay, got it. I would have never gotten it. Okay, well that's good because I don't think when was Maleficent 7? That was more recent, right?
No, that was recent.
Yeah. So, yeah, dude, gee, Willikers.
That was tight.
I've got nothing for that. Okay, that was a close one. We're good. Okay, Angels and Demons. Story must feature angels or demons or both in a prominent role. Now, we did read Rage of Dragons, which was a first time for me. And that has demons in it. And I also read Between Two Fires, which has legitimate angels and demons in it as well. So we have two choices there, but I think you got to put Between Two Fires because that one was literally about religion and angels and demons. So, and shout out to Christopher Buehlman.
Yes, and Charles, quick summary besides it being about angels and demons.
Yeah. Okay, you want a quick summary of the book? It
Not the
takes
whole book,
place.
Just the premise.
Yeah, so it's like a horror book with some fantasy influence. It takes place during like the Black Plague, and it kind of relates the plague to like being like demons just running wild in the real world, and then you have this older, grizzled, disenfranchised knight who stumbles upon this innocent young girl, and he's just trying to get her to safety in France. And as they go along their adventures, they encounter all kinds of demons and horrible people and all kinds of horrible stuff. And it's all themed around redemption in the face of a lot of horrible stuff. And so really great horror elements, really great fantasy elements. And I'm not super religious, but it uses religion in a really interesting way that's more like action and thematically driven than like preachy. So highly recommend. And we read The Black Tongue Thief, which is a fantasy book with horror influence that we loved. And so if you loved that and you wanted to continue to read Buhlman's work, this is kind of a good transition into more of his horror work with Between Two Fires.
There is a square coming up of horror, and I'm worried that that's the only book that's...
Well, should we can still put Rage of Dragons in here. Okay. I'm going to list both by Evan Winter. Yeah, obviously classic. Love that book too. And that one has demon-esque creatures, so that they describe as demons. And so I would count that on the list. So now we have square number 9.
Charles. Maleficent 7 also has demons.
Does it now?
Yes. Literally the main, arguably the main character is a demonologist.
Oh, you know who also has demons is the House in the Cerulean Sea. But I don't think we want to burn that book on this square.
But yeah, don't use that.
So Maleficent 7 I'll have here too. So we have 3 options to choose from depending on where the chips fall on the other squares. So I have all 3 kind of listed. And we'll move on to the next category where this one might be tough also. 5 SFF short stories. Any short SFF story as long as there are 5 of them. So you've read 5? You've read an anthology collection?
I read a collection, yeah. It's actually the collection that has the story that inspired Arrival, one of our favorite sci-fi movies.
I love Arrival.
Of the recent decades, maybe of ever for us. It's called Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang, and it's got a variety of stories ranging from, I'm just reading the premise off of Goodreads here, like another Tower of Babel inspired thing, people building a tower from Earth to heaven, and what happens if you break through to the other side. What if the fundamentals of mathematics were found to be inconsistent? What if and then what if exposure to an alien language forever changed our perception of time, which is the story that inspired Arrival. So this is a whole collection. I read the whole thing. We are good.
It's all sci-fi, you said?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
cool. Awesome. So
everything's got some twist to it that has something not in our reality.
Interesting. I love that. So, I'll have to check. And it was good, you said. I'll have to check it out. I mean, I love Arrival, good, so that's all I needed to hear. And I'm looking at, I haven't read a short story thing since Sharp Ends forever ago. So I'm overdue for a short story collection. Good thing you read Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang. Now, this is the square you're referring to, the horror square. Read a book in the horror genre, hard mode, not Stephen King or H.P. Lovecraft. I think Between Two Fires is the most horror book that either of us have read in this time period, right? Do you consider Gideon the Ninth? That's not really horror. It doesn't really count.
I would not consider that horror unless we really have
I mean, it's not like traditional horror. It uses like necromancers and there is suspense, but it's not... Between Two Fires is the most true to the square book that we have in the mix. I don't see anything else. Certainly lots of books we've read have like mature stuff that would be considered a horror element, but that is where we got to go. So if we're putting Between Two Fires in the horror square, in the Angels and Demons square, we have either Maleficent 7 or Rage of Dragons still in the list.
Yeah. I think Maleficent 7 might end up being the one in there just because I'm seeing other things that probably make sense for Rage of Dragons.
All right, so we'll put Cameron Johnson on the top of this list here for Maleficent 7.
Yeah, that's kind of, that story is kind of a, if you know Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames, it's kind of got elements of, I'm talking about Maleficent 7 for folks. That story has a bunch of kind of past their prime villains who are all getting together, and it's get the gang is back in town, and they're gonna fight off an arguably worse villain who is going to cause some serious damage to the world that they love? ? It's kind of zany, fun, action-packed, and humorous, and grimdark.
I love all of that. Yeah, and we have some interesting stuff coming around the corner with Cameron Johnson too that we'll maybe be able to talk about one day. But
yes,
that is very cool.
The author's name. I don't think I remember it too. Okay. Next up is self-published or indie publisher. So, I mean,
we can take our pick on this one.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind for me is we're reading Legacy of the Brightwash by Crystal Matar. I'm very close to finished with it. We will certainly be finished with it long before the deadline. So I'm willing to count it.
Me too.
That's the first that comes to mind.
That is the first thing that comes to mind. We've read a lot of indie books, though, but I think we will just go ahead and throw that one in there for now and let us continue along our way.
That book is Gaslamp Fantasy with the premise is kind of a mystery. A regulation officer stumbles upon the body of a dead girl and has been mutilated, and he has to find out why. It's a lot more complicated than that. It's got a lot of romance, steamy, spicy romance elements in it, and it is a unique book that I'm excited to talk about with you soon, Charles.
That is exciting. Yeah, no, I'm about halfway through it myself. We plan to. It's one of our next book discussions coming up on the show. Got a lot of love for it on social to read it, so that is it's really exciting to be able to kind of react to that and join in on that conversation. It's a first time read for me, so I'm excited to get into that in more detail in the very near future on this show. And it is a self-published book that we can include here, happily so. So the next category is set in the Middle East or Middle Eastern SFF. Read a book that is set in the Middle East or in an analogous setting that is based on real-world Middle Eastern settings, myth, and culture. So we've got a couple choices here. Would you consider the Judas Blossom as Middle Eastern inspired? It's kind of really all over the place because it's like an alternate history around the Mongolian Empire, and they're everywhere in that book. It's kind of a stretch, but
yeah, I mean, so they're invading Persia.
Yeah, so that's where it takes place.
Yeah,
that is the setting.
I would say it actually fits very well when you take that into mind, because Persia is, in the modern day, it's Iran, which is one of the first places you would think of when you talk about the Middle East. And the vast majority of it is taking place in Persia. So I actually think it's a fantastic fit for this square.
Stephen
the Battle Drum.
The Judas Blossom. The Battle Drum. Did we read that in this time period?
That's a good question, actually.
I don't think there's no way we did. Oh, wait, we did. We read the Battle Drum in May, bro. Ooh. We got our pick of the litter here. We'll definitely be using both of these books. Wow, It feels like so long ago that we read that. Battle Drum by Sara El-Arifi, book 2 of the Final Strife. Or no, the Ending Fire trilogy. Yes. And book 1 is the Final Strife of Sara El-Arifi. Big fan. We've talked about these books a lot.
Just Middle East? Is it Middle East inspired? Because that's
it says analogous setting that is based on the Middle East is also acceptable. So it's kind of a mix of Middle Eastern and her Ghanaian heritage as well. And she said that multiple times and said that directly to us on our show and the times that we've interviewed her. So that absolutely counts. I just assumed that was way earlier than the reading period, which I'm glad you double checked, because either one of those books will count. I'll list both for now, and I'm sure whichever one we don't use for this one we'll use in another square. So super excited about that. Let's go on to the next one. Published in 2023. A book published for the first time in 2023. No reprints or new editions. Hard mode. It's also a debut novel. So we've read a lot of 2023 published books that we can put on this list. It's just a matter of which one makes sense. I don't know if we've... Oh, wait. No, we haven't. Did we do any debut authors? I don't think so. Not yet, anyway. But published in 2023, so it doesn't even count if we were.
What about the book that wouldn't burn, Mark Lawrence?
Yeah, of course, but I mean not a debut. But that counts.
Debut is the hard mode.
Is the hard mode.
I was looking to see if it's
because we also read Judas Blossom, which we won't use for this. The Bone Roots by Gabriella Houston was another one that we read that came out in 2023. That I'll put on this list. Well, I'm looking for both. Came out in 2023 and debut. If we get a debut one, that would be great. But neither The Book That Wouldn't Burn or The Bone Roots or Judas Blossom. We also did... we read Loki by Melvin Burgess, which also wasn't a first time.
Far from a debut.
Far from a debut with Melvin.
And I think that's going to fit well into our myths and retelling square coming up. So let's stay away from that one for the published in 2023. I honestly think, although I don't think we can do a debut, which is kind of sad. We haven't read any debut authors this year. But I'm going to say that it's got to be a book that wouldn't burn, just looking at some of these other...
Well, we've got a couple choices. We've got The Battle Drum by Sara Leafy, The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. Oh, no. Wait, yeah, The Battle Drum was published in 2023.
Yes.
But we were using it potentially for the other square. So we got The Book That Wouldn't Burn, The Bone Roots.
We're probably using Judas Blossom for that, for the Middle East one.
Okay, yeah. So we got Judas. So we've got a bunch of Judas Blossom, Battle Drum, The Book That Wouldn't Burn, The Bone Roots, Loki. We read a lot of cutting edge stuff. So I'll have The Book That Wouldn't Burn, The Bone Roots by Gabriella Houston, and Loki by Melvin Burgess here, and whichever, we'll move them around, but we have at least we have choices. We did not hit the debut author hard mode, but I can live with that.
Yeah. All right, let's keep rolling here. So we'll talk about whichever book we select finally there. I'm actually seeing multiverses here, Charles, and Book That Wouldn't Burn fits into that.
There we go, 100%. That's probably where I would put this too, because we don't have a whole lot of options here. So yeah, you want to explain the category and the book for us?
Yeah. All right. Well, let me find the category.
Good luck explaining. The book is a rather ambitious one to try and explain. It's very good.
Yeah. Okay.
But there's a lot
Multiverse
going on.
and alternate reality. Ooh. Midnight Library works for this one too, Charles.
That's one of your reads?
Read a book in which the setting contains at least two universes, dimensions, planes, realities, etc. that characters within the book can travel between. Multiple worlds in the same physical plane of existence, such as planets within a universe, would not count for this square. Hard mode characters do not walk through a literal door to get to another world. Okay. Well, I would say this accomplishes hard mode.
That counts.
But anyway, a book that wouldn't burn without getting too much into a multiverse aspect of it, which can probably be a little spoilery. It is the story of it's really two main characters. It is a girl who comes from the dust, like from very humble beginnings, and then is brought to a place with this massive library that just has all information known to humankind and beyond humankind. And it also has this kind of parallel tale that's taking place of this guy who grew up in the library and doesn't know anything else, and how their lives intertwine. We won't get into the details of that, but it's a fantastic, I would say phantasmagorical story, and one of Mark Lawrence's best. Covers both the more literary big picture themes, like what happens when we have access to all this information and who controls it,
the abuse of the control of information, and all that
stuff, as well as the classic Mark Lawrence style action and fun that we all come to expect. So great story, can't go wrong with using it here. Midnight Library also works. So if we end
what also works here is the city we became. It's all about branching universes and parallel universes and alternate realities. It's all in there as well. It doesn't. It goes to different dimensions. It talks mostly about the theory of a million other realities, and it only goes to another dimension a few times. So it barely counts in that aspect where it says that the setting has to be in two different realities, which it technically is. But it talks a lot about multiverses too, so branching paths and whatnot. It's but we'll put, I think the book that wouldn't burn is the book for here. Now we've got the POC author. Author must be a person of color. Hard mode. Novel takes place in a futuristic sci-fi world. Again, City We Became would have knocked this one out of the park. Although it's not really futuristic. It is sci-fi. Note, this is now a recurring yearly square. Okay, but hard mode will be challenging every year to keep it exciting. Well, I don't know what that means. Okay. So would you consider, let's see, we've got a couple choices here to go from.
Few here.
So it's just a matter of what we want to put here.
The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. Those are the two that come to mind. I'm sure we've got a lot more, but let's say we use the Judas Blossom for our, which I think is a great fit for the Middle Eastern inspired space.
For sure. Exactly.
And then I was looking for the word square. I don't know why that was so hard for me to find. But then, let's go with the Battle Drum by Sarah El-Arifi, which is a continuation of her Ending Fire trilogy, which is the story of a really primarily a couple women surrounded by this, there's three main characters. Really. Anyway, point being, there's a caste system. We have characters from each of these castes, and it is based on the color of your blood. It centers around a lot of themes of power and oppression and all that kind of stuff. It's also a queer norm setting, so fit for that later square. And really great character work, really great world building, all of it. Love Sarah's work.
All right. Fourth row across. This one is an odd square. I don't think it's a fair square, if I'm being honest, either. Book club or read-along book. Any past or active R Fantasy book club counts. So you can see our past read-alongs here. So I get they want to do a little bit of self-promotion. That's fair. They do a lot of work in making this and all that. But I have no idea what's going on in the read-alongs in our Fantasy Zero. We had mentioned that there was a Steven Erikson one back when we did this at the beginning of the 23 Book Bingo Challenge, but we did not read anything in there. Any past or active book clubs count. See the full list. So let's check out that full list, I guess. Yeah. Oh, do I have the page? Okay. I think I do.
It's a lot of books.
So maybe by some dumb luck, one of these things that we've read is also on these lists.
Charles, Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb.
Okay.
Okay, but we did use...
We've already used it, but maybe we can move some stuff around. Like,
let's see if anything else comes up. Charles, when did we read Broken Earth, which would have been your first, or that was probably too long ago?
That was too long ago. Yeah,
Ooh,
unfortunately.
Charles.
Yeah.
Josiah Bancroft, Books of Babel, Senlin Ascends. We're kind of using that at some point.
We're using that as a mundane job right now, but we had options.
Okay.
We had options.
Keep looking.
Senlin Ascends is another option.
Dune is in there too, but we're using Dune.
Killing me. We're using Dune for what
literary.
were we using it for? Literary. Yeah, we got to use it for that. Unless you would also consider Robin Hobb literary as well, but either way, it doesn't solve our problem.
When did we read the final book of the Greenbone Saga?
That was literally in March. March 6th, 23. We just missed it. I know. So brutal. Nothing for... Is there anything for Stormlight Archive, dude? We read Rhythm of War right at the beginning of April.
True.
There's gotta be a Stormlight Archive read along, right? You got to assume either that or we're starting it.
Okay, I'm searching Stormlight Archive. Bada bing, bada boom.
Bada bing, bada boom. Have we put
That's
Sanderson in anything else yet? We did. We used him for one other thing, didn't we? Oh, young adult, but we also had Half a King on there.
Okay, throw Half a King in, and then.
So this will be the Rhythm of War. Oh yes, oh yes. So far we're doing it. We're doing it, guys. So I'm gonna put Rhythm of War in here. Rhythm of War. Shout out.
I really did not think we would have a shot at finishing the bingo board, but
we're close, dude.
We've gotten lucky a couple times, but
if we get any of them on the fifth row too, then we at least have like a column or a row or something done, you know? Let's see. A novella. Oof. Let's see. Read a work of fiction between 17.5 and 40k words. Hard mode. Not published by Tor.com. Which has a new name now. Okay, yeah, you've got two. Let's hear them.
I've got two that can work. One of which is a confession, and one of
is How You Lose the Time War a novella?
It is, but I think I read that a little too early. I'm checking right now when I finished.
Oh, yeah, that's the end of March. I'm looking at the date. It's literally the last episode we released before we got into April.
That's a bummer.
That is a bummer.
All right. But I've got two options here, so we're good. One is The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. And I don't see any reason not to throw that in unless we need it later. And the other book, Charles?
Yeah. Self-report.
The Narrow Road Between Desires by Patrick Rothfuss, which I did read without you. And
you read it, huh? Well, wasn't it already part of a series that... I mean, what? I would have read it too. Like,
I know, I should have told you.
I was purposefully holding it. Whatever. It's fine.
We'll settle that off the air.
It's all good because it gets us to... We have two good options here for novella, so I'm down for that.
Ocean at the End of the Lane. It's about a guy who's middle-aged now. He goes back to his childhood home, and he's there for a funeral, I believe, and he's kind of reflecting on his childhood, and he starts to remember all of these strange and sort of adventures that he had with this girl that he was friends with named Letty, and it is classic Neil Gaiman. It's got some kind of creepy elements to it, but it also brings about a lot of the like weird nostalgia of what it's like growing up that I think a lot of people will be able to relate to. And then Narrow Road Between Desires it's Patrick Rothfuss. It's a Kingkiller Chronicle. It's the book that isn't the third book that everyone's been anxiously awaiting. It's a novella about Bast, who is Quoth's apprentice, essentially.
Excellent. And that brings us to the next category, which we have our choice here. Mythical beasts. Read a book that prominently features at least one mythical beast, meaning a creature that doesn't exist in reality. I mean, you did Fourth Wing. We both read. The other one, Sarah J. Maas. The Bone Roots would be a great one here because Gabriella Houston pulled a lot of Polish, Slavic folklore into her creatures in this. You know, there was an emphasis on creatures there. I mean, we've got choices, man. We've got choices.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling as long as myths and retelling coming up, we use Loki, then I think that...
But wait, then that kind of burns our Read in 2023.
We used Loki for that?
Well, Read in 2023, we've had to move all the other books around. So right now I had Bone Roots and Loki were the two that I had in there. So maybe we can put Fourth Wing or I forget the name of Sarah J. Maas's books.
A Court of Thorns and Roses.
Court of Thorns and Roses. Wow. Yeah, you know that multi-million-dollar book franchise. Could also go here. You have fairies and stuff. That to me counts.
That in there.
But is that a creature? But it had creatures.
Oh yeah, it had all sorts of other creatures.
Mythical beasts. So we want to put a Court of Thorns and Roses in here?
Yeah, put that in there.
Because we want to use... Okay, elemental magic. Read a book that has elemental magic. The primary magic within the world deals with classical elements like earth, wind, air, water, or fire. Okay.
Charles, can we discuss that you wrote A Court of Thorns and Roses? Are you hungry?
I am very hungry.
That was the name of the pizza place in our local town that we frequented. Roses.
Roses with an A, yeah.
You're craving one of those chicken bacon slices.
One of those Sicilian slices, one of those chicken bacon slices all day. Buffalo slice, chicken ricotta. Yeah. I mean, you name it. But now we have the challenge of elemental magic. A hard mode, not Jim Butcher or V.E. Schwab's Shades of Magic, which no worries there. We didn't read those. So which ones will have elemental magic? I feel like we read something that had elemental magic recently.
Fourth Wing does have elemental magic. Even it's not the crux of the story, but all of the... So Fourth Wing, for anyone who doesn't know about this huge series that's topping the best-selling list, not just for fantasy, but it's a romantasy book that centers around a sort of magic college based around dragons, people becoming dragon riders, and they also have powers based on their link, magic powers individually based on their link to their dragon, and elemental magic is present as at least one person's powers. So
that qualifies as far as I'm concerned. You wouldn't consider necromancy. Didn't Gideon the Ninth have elemental stuff going on? Not as the focus, but didn't other houses, weren't they able to control stuff?
With elements?
Yeah. Didn't the different houses have different abilities? I kind of remember that being a thing. And only the ninth house was the house that had the necromancy. I'm trying to think
they have elemental. I'm also thinking the element I was thinking of that I could definitely say the character, at least one character has, feels like it's an element to me, but it's not one of these four elements. I'll also say, Charles, there's definitely elemental magic in the Powder Mage series, but we're currently using Promise of Blood as your it's been sitting on the TBR forever. We can look to see if
what
there's
else has
other
been on the
books
TBR
that fit into that.
Ooh, good question. I mean, I can't really count Sanderson on that. Should see. No, not that one. I mean, Rage of Dragons would count, but we're using that for something else, right?
Are we?
Are we?
Angels and demons, or
no? Because we did. We're using. Oh, that was horror. No, we are using it for angels and demons because we had to put between two fires and horror. So.
Oh wait, aren't we using? Let's go back because I thought we ended up deciding on Maleficent 7 for.
Ooh. Interesting. Maleficent 7. So, but we're using Rage of Dragons here anyway, and we can continue, right? Like.
I mean. Sorry, using Rage of Dragons for which one? For the.
We're using Rage of Dragons right now for the demons. Angels and demons. We also have Maleficent 7 there. But what I'm saying is if we're just going to put Fourth Wing in the Elemental and move on, then we're good no matter what.
We can no longer confirm that one of the 4 elements listed are... I feel like probably, but I just... I'd have to look into
Last thing we need is a controversy, Dylan. Like, you can't do me, like, dirty like this. So it says books that... Primary magic within the world deals with the classic elements. So it very specifically says earth, air, water, fire, like Avatar style. So it's got to be one of those 4.
I bet, because they have there's so many different powers mentioned. Like, I feel like wind, I feel pretty confident. Give me one sec. Still air time.
So I will continue and just say, hey, look, for myths and retellings, we have the choice of either Loki. I think Loki is the one you got to put here, right? Like, we'll leave the Bone Roots as our published in 2023. Oh, wait. Then who's our monsters? Oh, Court of Thorns and Roses are our monsters. This is where it gets tricky because now we're towards the end and now we have to start moving stuff around. So we got this. For myths and retellings, it's got to be Loki by Melvin Burgess, where he wrote a total retelling of a lot of classic Norse mythology from the perspective of Loki. If you're interested in Norse mythology at all, the wit and charm that Melvin Burgess brings to Loki and just the appreciation and admiration Melvin has for Loki. Interviewing him was so fun because he was just, willing to get into all the mischievous nature of Loki, and you could tell the passion was there, and it comes across in the writing as well. So I think that's the one we gotta do, even though there's, we could also put Court of Thorns and Roses as a retelling. So many retellings lately, but Loki's the most direct match, and we have the room to put it there. Yeah. So, Dylan, any updates on the elemental magic, or shall I go to the next category?
Just, you got to keep rolling here, Charles.
I will keep this thing moving. So the next one that we have is a queer norm setting. This is a book set in a world where queerness is normalized, accepted, and prevalent within communities. Characters are not othered, ostracized, or remarkable in any way for their queerness. Hard mode, not a futuristic setting. So, the perfect one for this is the House in the Cerulean Sea, is my thought. Didn't we use that on something else, or did we have it as an option for this exact
I think we've been saving it.
Charles, I think we've been saving it.
Is ice water?
I would say yes. I would say ice is for sure. If you're going by Avatar rules, they lived in an ice place. Yeah, we've kept it. It's kind of been sitting as an alternate in the mundane jobs category, but we have Senlin Ascends and the Mountain in the Sea for that. So I think we can put the House in the Cerulean Sea as our queer norm setting. I will say Legacy of the Brightwash has that going on too, a little bit. And then so does so many of the books that we've read. The Spear Cuts Through Water, which I read in March, so it doesn't quite count. Sara El Arifi, the Battle Drum would count here too, but we've already put that somewhere else. Priory of the Orange Tree, which you had read before this happened. So lots of options, but I think we're good with the House in the Cerulean Sea. So I'm going to keep going until you stop me as we do the research here. Coastal or island setting.
Saying ice is definitely an elemental magic by nature of fire, then I mean, by nature of water.
I mean, we're panicking right now.
We're panicking.
We are in panic mode. Is ice an elemental magic? I think we need to put that one up to the fans. Is ice considered an elemental power? But so they can manipulate ice, but not water? How does that work? Like, if their ice got melted, could they still use it? What is the power? Bro, you are panicking.
It's defined in that level of detail, but I'm panicking. That's all I can say for sure.
Oh, gosh. Well, I will keep going then while we think on that, because the next one is coastal or island setting. Story features a major setting that is near or surrounded by sea. Now, obviously, House in the Cerulean Sea would be good for this one. Wizard of Earthsea, which we read way before. Lies of Loch Lamora, again, we've read but doesn't count for this period. So we have to think of others. If you consider Manhattan an island, then you could do The City We Became. But again, we've also used that for another series. So the question now becomes, is there one we haven't considered yet? Or do we have to start moving things around? So I'm looking through our different reads here.
While I was panicking, you used House in the Cerulean Sea as
for the queer norm
setting,
which we have flexibility there.
Yeah, we can. What other options do we have for queer norm setting?
Legacy of the Bright Wash, Battle Drum, which I think we're using both of those for something else. Mm-hmm. Did we end up using the book that wouldn't burn? Oh, the alternate realities. Let's see, what else?
We could use Midnight Library in alternate realities.
Do we use Gideon the Ninth here for queer norm?
Yes.
I think that would be a good fit. Yes, we do. That is a good one. Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, which is described as like lesbians in space story. Yes. So I think it fully embraces the category. It's not only queer norm, it's like queer, like, is it, this is the priority, which I guess in a sense is normalizing it, right? When you're celebrating it. So it's not like people are being ostracized or canceled or remarked on for being queer at all. It's so I think it counts. So Gideon the Ninth goes into the queer norm category. So then coastal, that frees up House in the Cerulean Sea. That's okay. We're back. So there we go. House in the Cerulean Sea takes place on an island. Perfect. Next, this one could be tricky. Druids, a book that heavily features druids. Now, could we consider the bone roots for druids? And in that case, do we need to rework wherever we put the bone roots, which was, I think, was it 2023 that we put them? Yeah, we need a new publisher in 2023. That's not Loki, Bone Roots, Judas Blossom. Okay. Did we put, what's it called anywhere yet? Oh, we did. We put Legacy of the Bright Wash under self-publish.
My advice, Charles, would be throw Midnight Library into Multiverses and take Book That Wouldn't Burn and make that published in...
Midnight Library. Who wrote Midnight Library again?
Matt Haig.
How you spell Haig? As I move Book That Wouldn't Burn to published in 2023.
H-A-I-G.
H-A-I-G. And we are putting druids. Although, it totally counts. Totally counts for
Powers
druids.
from nature.
Powers from nature. That is what this whole book is freaking about. That starts with a woman using her powers to birth babies out of a tree. So, totally counts. Let's see. And thank goodness for that. Because we would have been in trouble. All right. So, featuring robots. Read a book that features robots, androids. Now, this could also be would it be a spoiler to say the book that I'm thinking of right now?
Yes,
I can't.
yes,
It would.
yes.
I don't think so. It doesn't, because there are characters that just are like sentinel guards, but I don't know if I want to say the book. But
don't worry.
I don't think it's a spoiler. I'm just trying to remember, but I don't think it is. But now that we've talked about it so much now, I'm afraid that just by even saying this book now, it brings... Let's see if we can find another book instead that features androids, robots, or the like. Let's see. No.
So, okay. The Mountain in the Sea has a character who is like an AI, basically, in a like probably more cyborgy or whatever, but
it says clockwork machines or automatons. It's got to count. So the Mountain in the Sea. So then we are 100% putting Senlin Ascends as the mundane jobs.
Better fit anyway.
Okay. The Mountain in the Sea by Ray Naylor. Ray.
Dude, we're gonna do this.
We're so close. There's only one category left, and that is the sequel. Read a book that is a sequel to another book. So which one do we pick at this point? I mean, we're allowed to duplicate authors, so we could go Robin Hobb or Brian McClellan with the Powder Mage trilogy. But are there others that we have read?
Can you repeat in series?
I also read The World We Make, which is also a second book in a series.
Could you imagine if we lose based on the sequel?
Guys, we need a sequel. It's not even a good one to ask for a recommendation. Because we read Battle Drum. I read The World We Make. The Rhythm of War. But all of these...
Wait, we used Rhythm of War as...
the read-along.
The read-along, right?
So we kind of need that. So can we repeat an author in the same series? If we can, then we just double Robin Hobb and we're done.
Yeah.
That's our one repeat. You can't use the same book more than once. You may not repeat an author on the card. Oh, you can't... Wait. It says you may not repeat an author at all. And you can't use the same book. It says only one square can be a reread. But it says you may not repeat an author except for the short story square. And you can't use the same book more than once.
The same book more than once? Wait, yes. You can use the same book multiple times?
No, it says you can't use the same book more than once. And then it says you may not repeat an author except on the short story square. Yeah. As long as you're not using that same book twice. You can repeat the author twice for short stories, but not the book. And you can't repeat books. So we're actually in some trouble here. But I think, if we commit to this, I think we can move some stuff around and make this happen. We just need to seriously think for a second. Nobody leaves until we figure this out. So,
Charles,
yeah.
Did we use Skyward's Seek Defiant? Did we use that for young adult?
We use Brandon Sanderson, though. We can't repeat Brandon Sanderson.
I'm just saying.
No, we used Half a King for Joe Abercrombie.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. We used Half a King.
Sequel.
So, let's see.
This is so sad.
Oh, no.
Is this what's happening?
Wait, we've read sequels to Sarah J. Maas. We read the second one. There's a window. The Wings of Wealth and Ruin. If we put that here and then we go back...
that's not right.
Whatever it is.
Not even close. A Court of Mist and Fury.
Oh, what's the
Wings of Wealth and Ruin?
Dude, I don't know.
But the confidence.
You knew what I was talking about, okay? The communication was achieved. But what's the second book called after all that?
I said it, Mist and Fury, a Court of Mist and Fury. I have another idea.
Okay.
If we use the novella square with ocean at the end of the lane, I think it is fair to use the Kingkiller Chronicle number 2.6, The Narrow Road Between Desires.
Yes, it totally is. It totally is. I agree. The ocean at the end of the lane is the novella. And then you have Patrick Rothfuss making an appearance right at the end, saving our butts as The Narrow Road Between Desires. But honestly, where did we put Court of Thorns and Roses? In Mythical Beasts? Dude, we could have found another Mythical Beasts book and put the second book of the Court of Thorns and Roses series in that slot too. But I like this also. This works. Trying to think of where there were creatures abound in our reading, but I'm not going to stress about it too much because...
What did we use Loki on?
Retelling.
Okay, yeah, don't want to mess with that.
Yeah, we don't want to mess with that.
We did it.
Don't worry about it. We did it. Wow, we did it. I was so surprised. I did not think we were going to be able to make it. I mean, the jury's still out. What could ruin us is this whole ice elemental magic thing. That really this whole thing comes apart. This whole
that out.
You thought you could just skirt, but the fans aren't going to forget, Dylan. If we publish this and say, "Hey, we've done it," and people see fourth wing in the elemental magic spot, and they go, "What the heck?" You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to blame you 100%. I haven't read this book.
It would be fair to blame me 100%.
Elemental magic?
So, okay, Charles, does the elemental magic have to be done by humans? I mean, we have fire-breathing dragons.
Oh, man, now you are bringing in... It says, read a book that has elemental magic. The primary magic within the world deals with the classical elements. Earth, wind/air, water, and fire.
To say that the primary magic within a world where dragons are the main magical thing, and they breathe fire, to say that is not...
Technically, you could argue the case. I don't think it is in the spirit of the square as it was intended, but I think you can make the case that fire-breathing dragons, when no other magic source exists...
There are other magic sources, but the primary would be
is
the
dragons.
Dragons.
That's a good point. I'm just trying to think. God, but we put Gideon the Ninth in the queer norm slot.
I'm not even confident that I would not call it the primary either.
No, necromancy's the primary by
to me,
far.
The primary magic used in Fourth Wing is fire coming from dragons. That is my interpretation.
This is going to be controversial, but you know what? Even if we need to put a poll out there. Does the Fourth Wing qualify for elemental magic? Yes or no? We put that out there. And then what we have to decide after that is, if it's no, then that's the one square that we're missing. And it should be a relatively easy one to fix. Because in the past, I've read like the Sword of Kaigan, which was elemental. And, there's a bunch of options out there. We live in a post-Avatar world where elemental magic is all the rage. So I'm sure we could find something. But by golly, I hope the Fourth Wing counts. Because we're not reading, I'm looking at what's coming up on our reading schedule. There's nothing there that screams elemental magic.
Charles.
Yeah.
This might be a little tease here for the future. Weren't we going to start rereading the name of the wind?
That should count as elemental. He really does.
Sorry, we used Rothfuss. We just used Rothfuss, literally.
But if we used him for the short story, then we could use him twice for Name of the Wind and the short story.
It's a novella, not a short story.
Oh, right.
Doesn't count.
Right.
So we are... The only one
desperate.
that we are questioning at all is the by far most popular book on this list. Especially now that we're on TikTok. I don't even want to make a TikTok about this, Charles, because I can't handle if we get backlash.
I think people would understand that we're desperate to make the case, and if they think we have a case, we're not going to go out here saying it is. We're going to put an asterisk on the list and say, do we have some reading to do, or does this count? I think that's the fairness here. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I think today we're already over an hour. I think we're good. And all we have to do is figure out if we need to read an elemental magic story or not. That's really how this fell. I'm kind of surprised. I thought for sure it would be. I mean, we were kind of. It was getting close. It
was touch and go at the end.
We were pulling on some books here to get where we needed to go. But 25 books, dude, all covered in this year-long time frame. We did it.
Yeah, we did, and that's what's kind of exciting when you step back and think about it. This is a list of categories that is specifically designed to broaden people's reading and their reading habits. Yeah. And the fact that we didn't even make a specific attempt to fit these categories, and we arguably hit every single one.
24 out of 25.
Arguably, in case there are arguments about Fourth Wing. But that being said, especially with a month plus to go, the fact that we
could read one book and be
one
done
of these categories over the last year just goes to show what I'm excited to say, which is FTF is doing some broad reading here. We're covering a lot of categories. We're reading authors who write from all different perspectives, who write all different settings, who write all different kinds of stories, who come from different backgrounds and identities. It's like, Charles, that's super exciting to be able to reflect upon here. And if the one thing we are missing is elemental magic, I mean, we still did a pretty great job.
We also had to really, we were pretty desperate for published in the 2000s. We had to pull on the Fight Club guy for that. But let's be real here.
What's wrong with the Fight Club guy?
Nothing's. We didn't talk about him on the show, and he's not fantasy. But
no, I mean, Charles,
is Choke a fantasy story?
Choke has. Oh, I might be confusing it with another. Let me double check, but I think that I'm pretty confident Choke has fantasy elements. Dude, Chuck Palahniuk is like, he writes the same book over and over and over again, and it's always a worse version of Fight Club. The question is, how much worse is always the. So give me a second here.
It does say it was published in 2001.
That is not in debate.
It's a novel, it's a satire, it's a dark comedy, it's psychological fiction. Which I don't think it has. Does it have to be a fantasy book? That wasn't one of the rules.
I think speculative fiction is kind of, assumed.
But it doesn't say in the rules. Nowhere in the rules does it say it has to be fantasy. It can be other fiction.
Fill airtime, Charles.
It says it's not in at least one of the official monthly book discussions. Okay, so yeah, that's it. In my opinion, it counts. But again, maybe we could read an elemental magic book published in the 2000s. Oh, but we can't duplicate. But But there's so many great books published in the 2000s that we could pull from that hopefully wouldn't be rereads. I mean, we got The Name of the Wind, The Final Empire, The Lies of Locke Lamora, American Gods could be good. The Blade itself.
Yeah.
The Red Wolf Conspiracy. Like, that was a golden age of like grimdark fantasy was the 2000s. And we've read a lot of the ones that were popular. So it would be interesting to have to dive into that era again and find something we hadn't read before. Totally down for that. It's an exciting exercise. But you read Choke, dude. You read Choke.
You can't take
that from me. It was published in 2001. It is a fiction book. A work of fiction. A fantastical work of fiction. And nowhere in the rules does it say you have to read an SFF book. You just have to read a book that was read, but that was published between 2000 and 2009 and not in the top 30 of our Fantasy's Best of 2023 list. Now, I haven't checked the list, but I don't think Choke is going to be on there. So no. I think we are good.
Especially because it's arguably not fantasy. I don't expect the fiction in any sense. There are books written by him that are definitely, and I think I was thinking Choke was one of those.
You read it, right? Since last April.
I read it I definitely read it since last April because I'm looking at my Goodreads and
okay.
No. Yeah, I definitely read it in the right time period. The question is whether or not it counts as whether or not it counts as being
fiction, literary fiction, like it's good. It's fine.
Yeah. Let me look at the. There's
guys, we obviously look. We've got a month to tinker with the list, so if there are issues with it, we still have a chance. I mean, we're literally looking at maybe one or two categories that we may be stretching the bounds of the rules, but for the most part, we did it, and that is just without even necessarily trying. Like, we always try and diversify the books that we read, of course, but we weren't necessarily being like, we're going to complete our Fantasies book bingo. So the fact that we got super far, at most 2 books that don't count, is very impressive. So go us. And, thank you guys for being along for the journey. Dylan, I don't think there's anything left at this point beyond going ahead and playing that sweet, sweet outro music. What do you say?
Let's get that sweet, sweet outro music pumping, Charles.
All right.
I'm going to read something from the 2000s.
Yeah, and I'll try and find something elemental. All right, everybody. Thank you all, one and all, for listening to yet another very exciting episode of the Friends Talking Fantasy Podcast. If you like what you heard today, if you want to support the show or let your thoughts known on some of these categories and books that we've put in said categories, the best place to do that is over on the socials at the FTF Podcast on Instagram and even TikTok, and then at the FTF Podcast with the number 1 at the end for Twitter. Now, Dylan, if they like what they heard today and they want to support the show even more than following us over on social media, what can they do?
Toss 5 stars to our podcast, which you can do over on Spotify. Click about, then click the star icon thing, and then throw us 5. We really appreciate when you do that. You can also rate and review on Apple Podcasts. That means you can write nice things about us. You can also tell us whether or not you think Fourth Wing counts as elemental. Write that in the review. Tell us what you think.
Only if you think it does, and you're going to rate 5 stars, of course.
Rate 5 stars, and then you can say whatever you want. You can tell us
I guess that's true.
5 stars of wrong. That's the FTF
whatever
model.
Sentiment is in your written review, as long as the star rating is 5, we'll be okay with it.
Yes. All right. You can also do lots of fun stuff by following us on TikTok. Please follow us on TikTok. I am desperate. We just got on there, and we're at the FTF Podcast, which you probably said already, Charles. But it is scary for me, a millennial, to be out there on TikTok I'm just trying to make friends. I'm just trying to get folks to engage with the conversation.
We're trying something new. It's scary. Like, we're making videos now. Like, it's crazy, the stuff that we do for you guys. So let us know it's working. Give us a shout out over there. But like Dylan normally says, just listening is more than enough. Thank you all so much for listening. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And as always, go forth and conquer, friends.